Hello again, everybody. This is Rich Eisen, and you are at the open mic, where every week, actually more than once a week now these days, I talk to somebody from the publishing world, writer, editor, or agent. And my guest today is the fabulous, wonderful Tori Eldridge. How are you doing, Tori?
Hey, Rich, I'm doing great, thanks. How about you?
I can't complain. As I like to say, everybody, I'm sitting here in my nice comfy house talking to a brilliant writer about writing.
Aw.
How bad can my life be, right? Well, for those of you who may not be completely aware, Tori's the author of the fabulous Lily Wong series. She's got another new series that's going to be, or a new book that's going to be coming out next year. We're going to talk about all of those things and some other things related to writing here in just a moment. In fact, sooner than just a moment, we're going to get started right now. Again, welcome, Tori. It's always fabulous to talk to you. You're a very inspirational person for me.
Aw.
A little bit, we'll get into it a little bit later. It's part of a question I'm going to ask you, but let's get started with, because as I noted, you have several projects on your plate, but I want to start with the Lily Wong books because I really enjoyed them. And you've received an awful lot of praise for these books, several awards. They're really doing well. For those who may not be familiar, tell me a little bit about the Lily Wong series.
Oh, it's a series close to my heart. It's about a Chinese Norwegian modern day ninja in Los Angeles with Joy Luck Club family issues, who's, a heroine for protecting women and children. So, yeah, that's Lily Wong in a nutshell.
Well, and she's incredibly interesting because she is very young, she is female, she's multiracial, and she's a modern ninja warrior. That which is really quite a combination. So, how did you develop her, and how do you see her evolving? What might we see from her character development as time goes on?
Ooh, good question. Well, she came out of my own life, because as a lot of people know, my mother is Chinese Hawaiian from Maui. My dad's North Dakota Norwegian. They met in Japan, so all those cultures are really big. And of course, I grew up in Honolulu, but also I got the martial arts bug and ended up training long enough to become a fifth degree black belt in Toshindo Ninja martial arts. And of course, I live in Los Angeles for over 35 years. So it, all of those things went into this character that just appeared on the page for me when I was writing a short story. So it became really important to me as I was writing this. I love mysteries and I love thrillers, but I also like to learn about people and communities and cultures and new cool things. That's what I like as a reader. And so that's what I wanted to put it in as a writer. So I wanted to really saturate her with my heritage. Her heritage is a little different. Her mother is from Hong Kong. She's a high-powered finance businesswoman, immigrant, so unlike my mother. Uh,
Mhm.
but I wanted to do that. But I also wanted to show a as authentic as I could be, modern day take on what ninja are. Because we all get the sensationalism thing, but not everybody knows that it's an actual martial arts. Not everybody knows that there are thousands of people all over the world training in the ninja arts to not become assassins, I hope, but hopefully to help the world be a better place, to empower themselves, to empower their communities. And that's kind of where it is with Lily. Now, you mentioned she's young. Yeah, she's 25, and that was a real conscious decision for me. I have two adult sons. They're now past 25, but I lived through that age with them, and I remember what that age was like for me. And oh boy, do you remember, when we were
Oh,
that age? Oh,
kind of.
yeah, you're full of, idealism and enthusiasm and energy. It's a time where you take the biggest risks, you make the biggest mistakes. Lily is not a perfect person. She's not always doing things the best or the safest way she could. She's out there with this passion She works for a women's shelter, and she takes on cases of her own, and she gets into a lot of trouble. And at the same time, she's also, you remember that stage when we're trying to figure out how to be with our parents as adults?
Yeah.
There's that very, confusing time, both as a parent and as a kid, I might add. And so 25 was a really cool age, for me to investigate. And it gives Lily a lot of room to grow. At that age, we grow very fast. We don't have to wait years and years and years. Now at, my age, maybe the growth is kind of strong out over years. But when you're 25, oh, from one month to next can be huge awakenings. And so for me as a writer, that's a very exciting character to write.
Is she going to age as the books go on? And I asked, one of my very favorite, a couple of different really important book series to me in my life have been Walter Mosley's Easy Rollins
Mm.
series and all of the Navajo tribal police books that Tony Hillerman wrote. And one of the things I really liked about those books is that the characters do age, and they go through those stages of life like you're talking about, and how they see the world in the beginning evolves tremendously from where the later books. Is that what you also envision for Lily?
That's an interesting question. Book one was set in the summer of 2019, and book two came, I think it was 3 weeks after that, and book three came a month after that. So book three comes out, that's The Ninja Betrayed, and that comes out September 14th of this year. And it takes Lily and Ma to Hong Kong. So there are tremendous things that are happening in her personal growth and things that she's dealing with, and also her relationships between her parents, between she and her parents. So there's huge emotional growth happening. I have the fourth book in my head outlined. I don't want to say too much about it, but it happens right on the heels of the third book. I'm also, how we do in the back of your head, you have this kind of idea for a fifth book. If the readers still are in love with Lily Wong, a fifth book, I think in my head is going to jump in time. So it won't be that closely set. But these first four books are very closely set in a time. And I think if there's a fifth book, it will jump uh, possibly, as much as a year or
Okay.
more. So, yeah. So it all, in answer to your question, it all depends on how long readers are interested in Lily. And I'm inspired to write Lily. It could evolve in many ways and jump forward in time, quite a bit.
Right.
Walter Mosley has been at this a long time with that character. So,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a good reason to jump, in time, because he himself is aging and changing perspective and stuff. So
Right.
we'll see.
You mentioned, of course, and I mentioned first that she's a ninja, and you mentioned, of course, we know of you, you're a ninja as well. And I think we use that term and we hear that term especially in media. And I think, and you and I've talked about this before, but it conjures up images in the head of most people because they don't really understand what a ninja is. So, you touched on it briefly, but would you expound on that just a little bit more for somebody who's expecting Lily Wong to, to have a face covering and to go, climbing walls and all? I mean, she is clearly incredibly athletic and skilled, but I don't think, maybe somebody who doesn't, when they read this, they're going to say, well, that's not the ninja I had in my head. So please explain a little bit more about that term and what it really means to you.
Sure. Sure. And you know what? I hope they have that reaction. This is not the ninja I expected in my head. Good, good. Because if you're getting your idea of ninja from television and film and other novels, it probably won't be, By the way, I love all of those things. It's so much fun. I love the, ninja in black pajamas and, assassin, scurrying across the, feudal Japan and, and the Yakuza and all that. I dig it. I totally dig it. I'm even into the Ninja Turtles and the Three Ninja, the whole thing. It's fun, but that's not what I was about. Right. I wanted to show a more authentic thing. So when I tell people, yeah, so yeah, I study the ninja arts. I hold a master level, practitioner's license in this. And they go, what? And I'm like, yeah, so you could say I'm a modern day ninja. I know a lot of them. We're all over the place. And we're studying an art that is, for me, the most all-encompassing art I've ever encountered. I started out in Tang Soo Do Karate. I did some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I did a lot of kickboxing. Love that. So much fun. So I did, I did some Eskrima. I did, all those things. But the ninja arts are, to me, very all-encompassing. They pull from 9 different lineages, from espionage to secret ways of walking to how to fit in, almost as an actor, right? Playing in things in addition to ways of physical combat, ways of using particular weapons. We have a lot of a full breadth of archaic weapons, your typical sword and naginata and, spears and, all those things. But we also address what I would call environmental weapons or modern day weapons that come off of that. So when we look at these old fighting examples, these classic fighting examples, we're also adapting that to modern scenarios that apply right now, in 2022, 21, sorry, I'm projecting into the future, and the weapons we have around us right now, the common weapons and the common ways with which we are attacked, and the way in which we learn to fit in with the energy and vibe and environment and subtly transform it, redirect it to bring the best possible outcome or the outcome that we are trying to create, right? So if Lily is blending in maybe the black pajamas that you see in a lot of assassin movies, that's not the way to do it, right? So you'll see her fitting in, impersonating. You'll also see a lot of other skills that she has, because one of the things that we do in the ninja arts is we collect and adapt and use anything that works. And then, but we have a way of moving, an inherent way of moving that is a way of using gravity and being natural that makes it unlike say a sports martial arts, which is more like, a sprinter and right in there. We tend to fall into things and absorb things. And so the more advanced you become, the longer and more skilled you become in the art, the harder it is to detect that you've even done anything.
Mhm. Well,
So yeah.
let me ask you what that both you've mentioned, you're a 5th degree black belt, and I will not try to repeat the name of the martial art because I'm so terrible at that, and I will just embarrass myself and probably you. But uh, tell me a little bit more about what all of that has, how it has impacted your writing. What has it meant to you as a writer, whether it's maybe just the discipline or how you develop characters? What does it mean for you as a writer to have those skills?
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, one of the things that you do once you get the basic skills that are required for, say a 1st degree black belt, or a second, or even a third. Um, what changes from being a martial arts practitioner, a ninja practitioner, to, um, a martial artist is the ability to live in the void and create in the moment. That's where the magic is, and that's what makes this art so darn hard to teach. But that's what I find as a writer, right? So, we study our craft, and we build our toolbox, and we gain our skills. And then when we're writing, we're looking at that blank page, or that page with an outline of notes, or whatever it was we have. And we're living in that void, in that place of creation and freedom, where even if I'm a big outliner, even if we have, like, chapter by chapter summary of every chapter in our outline, which I do, we still, when we're writing, live in that void of freedom where we can go in any direction, where we can adapt. And that's what happens in a fight, right? In a fighting scenario. You're in there. If you're trying to apply a technique that you've studied to a particular thing, you can become married to it, in the same way that if you carry a particular weapon and the weapon is out of reach, you can become focused on getting that weapon instead of free flowing, adapting to the fight itself and using whatever is at hand, in body or within reach. You see where I'm going with this? So when I'm living in this kind of, in the moment adaptation and fluidity, then, sure, I've got that chapter by chapter summary. So I'm not really facing a blank page. I kind of have an idea of what's going on, what the objective is of this scene. But at the same time, I'm completely unattached to that. I'm ready to let characters speak and surprise me and take me wherever it needs to go. Or sometimes it's even just the way in which I wrote a sentence or began a sentence that carries me into a slightly new direction. And I go, oh, and so I follow it, and I let myself follow it. And so I think that's the thing that's most in common for me with writing and the ninja martial arts.
That's really, really interesting. I think most writers tend to fall in one of two camps. They either seat of the pants or they do outlines. And you're one of the only ones I've heard of who maybe does both. Does the outline and yet still, as you say, lives in the moment enough to go free form if that's what feels right at that time. And I think especially newer writers or people who are um, don't have a lot of history in it, you tend to feel like there must be a rule here and I must follow that rule. And that's the only way I'm going to be successful, because successful is the end game. And I know for me, I struggle with that all the time. I mean, I'm a reporter by trade, so I live on deadline, and I believe, I know what the end game's got to be. And really hard for me to turn that off when I do creative things and be in the moment. As you say, I'm very envious in a way of that, because it's challenging to do that, to say, yeah, I was going to go there this way, but I'm really feeling like we maybe would have said this instead, or that doesn't feel right at the moment, even though it might serve a plot point 3 chapters from now. It feels artificial. And it sounds like you have the ability to pull back from that and say that to yourself and then follow it. So I actually,
Yeah.
I'm envious of you, Tori.
Oh, that's cool. I ran into the same thing with martial arts students, because when you start out and you're teaching the skills, right, which for a writer is like the craft, um, all of those lessons become like set in stone for a martial artist on their way to black belt. It's set in stone. This is how you do it. And then you test for your black belt and you're awarded, you tie it around your belt. And the next day starts and your teacher, if they're in our kind of art, says, yeah, all that stuff that we've been telling you is absolutely, this is how to do it. Yeah, now we're going to expand and we're going to let that go. And every subsequent done, that's what you call the levels in black belt, become letting go of those, because you needed those initial skills. You needed the foundation. You need to learn how to write, right? You need all that basic stuff. But then it becomes, as you get more and more, it becomes yes, or, as a teacher, I would say that a question would come and I would say, and how do you feel about that? And how does that feel for you in this instant? And a lot of students would get very, very frustrated. A lot of them dropped out at that point because it wasn't like advanced levels of, say, Tang Sudo Karate, where it just became more definitive. Yes, everything you knew, and now we're adding to it and we're cementing it. Ninja arts don't work that way. And so I think it's very conducive to this creative process as a writer.
You also you've come from Broadway, teaching, television, and as creative as those arts are, you have a script, you have direction, you have a lot of people who are telling you where to, here's your mark, here's your lighting, here's your line. Um, it feels very much the opposite of what you're talking about with martial arts in a way. That said, how did that background impart on your, or imprint, I should say, on your writing now? Because um, it had to, I would imagine, had to have also had a big impact in terms of storytelling or what have you. But tell me a little bit about that part of the of your experience and how it shaped what you're doing now.
Oh, interesting question. Yeah, you're right. It was like really different and really scary, right? Because now I don't have a choreographer giving me the choreography, or, a screenwriter giving me sides to learn, or a director helping me pull out this emotion or everything. It's like now I was a person taking something from nothing and creating it. Wow, that was scary. Still is scary, I might add. So that was something. But that said, there were so many things I learned as an actor, singer, dancer that I apply, especially as, well, I won't even say especially. All right. So as an actor, one of the things that helps me the most as a writer was how I used to dive into character for a role. So I would fill in the blanks that weren't on the page and create a sense of who this person was, who their family was, where they had been, what their attitude, maybe what even happened 15 minutes before the scene began. What emotional place are they beginning this scene? Where are they coming from? What's their relationship with the other people in this scene? Um, and then clues from the screenwriter or the teleplay writer, television, right, that's what you call it, a screenplay for television, right, teleplay. There are little clues in there that they give you. Could be in the dialogue. That's when it's really good, when you can just get clues about the character from the dialogue, from what you're hearing. Or it might actually be in the description, that help you understand more the subtext of what's going on. You may be saying this, but that may not really be what you're communicating, or what this scene is about, or what that relationship was about. So all these things that I used to do as an actor, I still do as a writer. And that for me is what makes things much more rich and deep and complex. And when I'm writing, I'm always reading out loud. And when I'm doing characters, I get very dramatic. My husband's like, "What's going on over there?" It's like, you're listening to a movie. It's like, no, it's just me talking to myself in personalities. And so when I do that, I'm actually, in my imagination, I did this as a kid too. I was like way into imagining things. I'm that person, and then I'm this person. I'm talking at myself, and of course my expressions are changing, my mannerisms are changing, and this is while I'm writing. Okay, this is not me performing. This is me writing, creating, and so what happens is the dialogue. For me anyway, sounds like the person I'm writing. It doesn't sound like me as the writer writing the dialogue. It comes from me pretending to be the characters that are in my scene. So those are the things I get from writing. From dancing, is kind of tied in with martial arts, which is a lot of a sense of physicality, a sense of, me in my physical place and how that feels. And so I like to write in a lot of different sensorial ways. And so how things physically feel, especially for a character like Lily Wong, are very important, and how to convey what she is physically doing and how that physically feels is also very important. And so I draw from my experience as a dancer and as an experience as a writer. And that leaves the singing. And that actually plays a big part in my writing, because for me, language, the written language for me is music. It has a cadence, and it has a rhythm, and it has a phrase, and it has a crescendo and a decrescendo. And so there are some words that sound right to me, and some words that mean the same that don't sound right. And I'm not even just talking about connotation, which is exceedingly important. I'm talking about the sound of the word, how many syllables it has. Does it make that sentence, does it give it that elongated flow, or does it give it that punch? And do I want one or the other inside that paragraph? And is there one too many sentences in that paragraph for that musical phrase? This is how I think of written language. I don't know if it sounds crazy or not, but that comes from being a singer.
Wow. So the impact seems huge. I want to get, I know you have a new work, a whole new thing coming out as well, which I want to ask you about in a minute, but I have one more Lily Wong question because to me
Ooh.
it's a really important one. Um, she is a foodie, and I
Oh,
happen,
yeah.
are you a foodie as well? Is that part of what that character development came out of?
I love food. I love tea. Thank God I have always been an athletic person, or, I'd be like 200 pounds, because I'm constantly thinking about food and eating food. And I remember I used to go over to my sister's house for dinner, and she would make twice as much as she normally would, because she knew I was coming.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's where it comes. And oh boy, in the third book takes her to Hong Kong. The food, whoa.
Well, you know what though, I love it as a storytelling uh, tool, or there's probably a better word than that. I'm a huge coffee person. I will
Mhm.
walk. I would walk 1,000 miles for a good cup of coffee, and so in the manuscript that I'm working on, I have a character who is very obsessed around coffee. Now, I try not to overdo it, but again, when you impart these things uh, from yourself into these characters, for me, that was one of the most realistic ones as somebody, because I know it is real. It is something that matters to me, and I will stop what I'm doing. I have schedules that are around coffee, and so when I'm reading one of the books and I see how much food means to her, it feels very real to me. It makes her a much, because I can't really relate to being a ninja, but I can relate to liking good food, right? And having that distract me in some way from, or be part of my thinking, or part of how I wind down, or wind up even. So I think it's a tremendous character element.
Oh, I'm so glad. There was another aspect for that, because I'm writing a book that deals so much with culture, and not just with Lily's, Hong Kong and, Midwest, North Dakota, Norwegian cultures, right? And because her father, her North Dakota, Norwegian father, owns an authentic Hong Kong cuisine restaurant, right? So he's a very unusual person, and all these cultures are in there. And then the Japanese culture of her ninja martial arts, and of course her sensei, love him. But also because she's in Los Angeles, one of the most diverse cities, in the world. And we have so much food. And if you really want, I think, if you really want to understand a culture, a community, people, um, eat their food, enjoy their food, find out what their food is about. And so it's very important in this particular series that she is not only just so into her food, it's in everybody's food. And I think through that you get hints to culture and love and community. And so
Mhm.
that's another thing that this serves in this particular book series.
Well, I mentioned that you have a whole different project that's set to come out next year, Dance Among the Flames. Tell me a little bit about it because it sounds really fascinating.
Oh boy, thank you. This one's whew, this book is very close to my heart. It actually comes from the first novel I ever wrote, and it was epic and huge, and I didn't quite have the right way to tell it. And it took, I think, writing maturity and many ways of exploring this novel before I finally came on the way that I wanted to tell it. And it spans 3 continents, 40 years, and an incident in 1560 France. It has this huge scope, and it's about a woman, a desperate mother who rises from the slums of Brazil to become a powerful wielder of Quimbanda magic. And Quimbanda is the spiritualism of Brazil. It's one of them. You might say the dark side of the very beneficent Umbanda, Candomblé, Macumba spiritualisms that are an amalgamation of Catholicism and African Yoruba and indigenous Brazilian traditions, right? And so that's where the whole Umbanda religions come from, and they're very empowering, and they're wonderful, and they involve mediums and um, channeling spirits, so that the followers, the congregation, can speak directly to these beings for support and guidance and things, instead of having an intermediary. And so it's a very empowering, very positive. Now, Quimbanda kind of deals with the darker versions of it, and so that is the route that happens with Serafina Olegario. So it's a very exotic story. It is rich in the culture. Oh my God, I spent decades just immersing myself in this amazing Brazilian culture and spiritualism, and truly fell in love with it. And I had an opportunity to spend a few days with a friend of mine, oh, way back when. I joined her in Rio de Janeiro to visit her family. And I was there during the semifinals for a football match, right? Soccer, match. And oh, what a thrill that was to be, to see a local perspective, to be in Rio de Janeiro with a local, right? Up there on a apartment building, looking out, and the whole city shuts down. Anything to do with soccer, the whole city shuts down. It's a big deal. Green and yellow, flyers and everything. And if anybody scores a point, you can hear it through the walls, from the streets. You can hear honking. It is the most incredible thing. So just to get a taste of everything that I felt when I was there, because I've written other stories that have been published in short fiction and anthologies, and other works in project that have not yet come out, that deal with global cultures, other countries. And I love to dive into that and learn about that. I think if I was going back to college, I'd be an anthropology major. Like my son was, because it's so fascinating to me. And so that's what I wanted to write about. And the story is it's wildly imaginative and very dark. Oh, it's got a lot of heart-pounding suspense going on it, and a horrifying fourth act.
Well, I look forward to it. I think. I think I do. Just two quick things. 'Cause I don't want to keep you forever, but two quick questions. One, this last year has been tough on everybody. We know this, driven in no small part by these terrible political divisions that we're living through. Um, so much negativity has been aimed at the Asian American
Oh,
community, um, and you know, grossly unfair uh, things aimed at the Asian American community. Is that, well, two things? Two things. Your uh, your emphasis on multicultural understanding is really admirable, and you were doing it clearly before this happened anyway. But the question that maybe comes to mind is, will this work its way into any of your stories? I know you say you already have like two or three more story plots already lined out in your head, but is this something that you could see maybe working its way into a story? I mean, these are such bizarre historic times. Or is that something you would prefer just to not, you know, incorporate into what you're doing with fiction?
I'm not sure. Um, I have a pretty good sense of, the fourth Lily Wong book, and I can say that it's not in Los Angeles. It's not in the United States. So it probably will not play a factor in the fourth book. The fifth book, I don't have a clue. I just have this general idea of a jump in time and the reason why there's a jump in time and where she might possibly be going, but I don't really know. And I don't really have any idea of what's going on there. So I don't know. In answer to your question, I do think there are some authors who are writing about um, racial issues in America, in the United States, as a main focus of the book, right? And then there are a lot of uh, Black, Indigenous, people of color authors, right, who are writing books that have BIPOC protagonists and stories and nuance and community, but are writing maybe crime fiction or thrillers or fantasy or whatever. And what you're getting is an appreciation and a taste and hopefully a greater awareness for how life looks through those eyes and the kinds of things that you're seeing through it in this, mystery thriller or this, dystopian thriller or whatever, without the book being about
Right.
that, right? Um, I would say if I have to guess, because sometimes I just don't even know what I'm going to go and write. But if I had to guess, I would probably fall into that latter group,
Right. Well, I
that
will say,
simply because of my characters and the community and the sense of place that hopefully I'm promoting empathy and intriguing you and making you want to learn and appreciate and adding layers to whatever kind of story I'm telling. So I don't know, this sort of thing, if I bring Lily especially back to the US, say in the fifth book, it may or may not become a thing. I don't know.
well, I will say, I do hope people um, get that out of it, because I think you learn so much more in these subtle ways, um, if you're open to it, which I like to think I am. But I think it's one of the best aspects of reading books like yours is I feel like not only am I getting a great story, but I'm learning something
Yeah.
every time, and that's fabulous. So I really do hope people take advantage of that. We're really tight on time here now, so I'm going to go straight to the last question, which is, I always like to end on what I hope is a fun question. I mean to it.
Yeah.
And that's, let's just say I had the power to put you together for a conversation with just one of the following three people. Uh, who would you choose and why? And the options I'm going to give you, and I know, again, I'm going to probably massacre this name, so feel free to correct me. You will not hurt my feelings. The Hawaiian Queen, Lily.
Liliuokalani.
Yes, thank you. Uh, the great dancer Martha Graham,
Oh,
or the fabulous director Akira Kurosawa. You can
whoa.
choose just one of those three people to be put down with a conversation with. Who would you choose and why?
Wow.
Yeah, I like
Um,
up too.
wow. Ooh, Kurosawa, boy, that would be a cool conversation. But I'm going to go with Queen Liliuokalani. I have relatives on my Hawaiian side that have, traced our roots back to, I think it's 1807 or something like that. And it's so fun to have a family tree of that and to have, these little stories that people have accumulated. And I would love to get a sense of what she was experiencing personally from her words, from her heart, from, what it was like to go through what she did and what Hawaii was like at that time. Oh, I think that would be who I would want.
Well, fabulous. Well, if you are not familiar with the Lily Wong series or Tori Eldridge, let me encourage you strongly to do so for both. Tori, as always, fabulous conversation. I really appreciate all of your insights and how, um, like I say, I really, you're inspiring to me because um, I, when you've done a lot of different things the way you have and the way I have, landing on writing and taking all those experiences and doing them the way you do is really inspiring. I think
Mm.
anybody can really learn something from you. So um, anyway, if you haven't discovered her books, I strongly suggest you do. Until next time, this is Rich Eisen with the Open Mic. Thanks again to Tori Eldridge, and we will see you in the very near future.